right, let's give it a moment, folks. I don't know if we're live right now. We're going to find out just a moment here. Let's just wait for confirmation of the transmission and the signal going out to all of the ends of the earth. All right. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening, wherever you are in the face of this plane, in possibly one that is a lot larger than we've been told, with a bunch warmer, coming to you on this Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. I want to thank you all for tuning in this morning. I don't like to get caught up in headlines and all the stuff they want us to look at, because to push the envelope. That was Joe Imbriano on March 13th of 2013, folks. That was the tagline that I launched my website with, the FullertonInformer.com, many years ago, because everything is a lie, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why education is mandatory, to make you learn what they want you to think and make you think you know what they want you to know. I want to talk to you today about the carbon dioxide capture programs. There's this agenda that is being pushed by the social engineers and the murderers about how this gas called carbon dioxide, it's a carbon atom and two oxygen atoms combined, and it's an interesting molecule because it doesn't have a liquid phase under normal atmospheric conditions. Carbon dioxide is a gas that when you breathe out, you exhale. Carbon dioxide is a byproduct of respiration. It is a byproduct of aerobic respiration. It is a byproduct of you eating your cornflakes and breathing out carbon dioxide and water. It is a byproduct of you consuming any type of, you exhale this gas. And this is an interesting gas. It's odorless and colorless. And it goes from a solid to a gaseous phase. It skips the liquid phase. That's called sublimation, for those of you who may not remember their high school chemistry. But carbon dioxide's always interested me because it's plant food, folks. And the plants need carbon dioxide to operate, to live, to metabolize, to uptake things that they need out of the dirt and pull this gas out of the atmosphere. And then they give off oxygen. That's right, folks. Plants, and marine plants in the ocean, in the lakes, in the freshwater stores, produce oxygen. Matter of fact, the majority of the Earth's oxygen is produced in the ocean. Did you know that, folks? That photosynthetic algae produce the vast majority of the Earth's oxygen supply, not the rainforests, okay? That is what causes us to have air to breathe, ladies and gentlemen. The photosynthetic plants in the ocean. Now, the trees are obviously very important, but the process by which oxygen is produced, that we take for granted, every breath we take, that we do subconsciously through a parasympathetic nervous system's operation. We breathe without even realizing it, and we take for granted a gas in the atmosphere called oxygen that we don't even really care to think of where it comes from. We just know it's there in adequate amounts for us to live. But the deniers of Jesus Christ, who seek to murder the vast majority of humanity, have a large amount of underground facilities, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. And for those of you who have not followed me for some time, I run websites called NASAfraud.com and NASA666.com. And NASA's really nothing more than an occult, black magician, sorcery, deception operation that is designed to suck tremendous amounts of money out of the budget to go into constructing these underground facilities and the technology necessary for these sons of Cain to live underground, right? They need technology to live under the ground because they're afraid of us and they're going to do stuff to us that they don't want be exposed to, right? So, they have these massive underground facilities that they're going to go hide in because they're afraid of us, and they want to get rid of us. They want to do something really bad to us and kill off most of us because they're afraid of us and they hate us because they're their father, the devil, who is a murderer and a liar from the beginning, right? And that's why everything they do is through deception and usury and enslavement and lies and fear and just complete messing everything up. But they've got these massive underground facilities that they're going to go hide in. And these carbon capture operations that are supposedly in existence to lower the atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations, they're supposedly to save the quote-unquote fake planet, right? Because, the runaway carbon dioxide gas emissions, like from people breathing and for people having a fireplace and for people having a gas stove and for people that are composting in their garden, that produces methane. That's another so-called quote-unquote greenhouse gas. And, the foregut and the rumen and the alpha amylase enzyme mechanism in these cows and grass-eating animals that produce methane, they're also a target because they produce milk and meat and cheese and butter and things that we need to survive. But by and large, the CO2 is being removed from the atmosphere by these tremendously expensive facilities called carbon capture facilities, folks. And these carbon capture facilities are taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere through various chemical processes of atmospheric distillation and other techniques, and they are removed from the atmosphere and they're pumped underground. Oh yeah, we're going to take all this gas out of the atmosphere to save the earth, and we're going to pump it underground. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is so immense, and there's just so much of it because there has to be, and there always will be, because it's what the plants use. And, there's no way to stop the production of carbon dioxide gas because it's a natural process of combustion when things burn. It is a natural process of oxidation of certain types of organic matter and decomposition. It is a natural process of mammalian respiration, like the dolphins and the monkeys and the dogs and the cats. They breathe out carbon dioxide. The fish breathe out carbon dioxide. The people breathe out carbon dioxide. They want us to go to net zero because that's their way of saying, hey, we got to justify getting rid of everyone. We don't want anybody breathing out anything because we have this runaway quote-unquote climate change. When in fact, all the weather modification is being caused by very sophisticated weather modification systems that your children have helped design when you put them in college. And they got these advanced degrees in these theoretical sciences, and you thought they were advancing the cause of humanity when in fact they're advancing the agendas of the eugenicists. And this weather warfare that they're waging on us through scalar weaponry and microwave weaponry and all of these phased array installations on the ground that they bounce off the firmament and heat up the ionosphere and manipulate all the jet streams and the barometric pressure gradients. They're blaming that on CO2 emissions. And so, cleverly enough, these devils have also gone about taking a tremendous amount of funding from various governmental budgets to devise a scheme to capture carbon dioxide and store it underground. And then, of course, in like fashion, through their deception and their con jobs and their thievery from the taxpayers, they've also funded and developed these devices that convert carbon dioxide into, you guessed it, folks, oxygen. So, through the space program, NASA's got this supposed reactor that they developed for quote-unquote oxygen production on Mars. The Mars rovers filmed in Greenland and New Mexico desert, same place they filmed the moon landing, and They're probably still using Stanley Kubrick's blueprint and his lenses and his cameras, for all I know. But the point is that there is no Martian rover. There is no plan to go to Mars. There's no way to go to Mars. You can't push against a vacuum. There's no way to get past the firmament. And even if there was, there's nothing to push against. You can't have propulsion in a vacuum. It's impossible. In order to have propulsion, you have to have some force exerting a force against matter to move it, okay? I'll tell you what. Do me a favor. Next time you go to the mechanic and he puts your car up on a lift, and get in the car and say, hey, boss, can I try something here? And so get in the car, start the engine, and step on it and see those tires spin while that car's up on the rack, right? And watch that car go nowhere fast, right? But if it's on the ground, it's got what? Traction, because the tires are pushing against the road. And it propels it forward or in reverse, whichever way the transmission is inclined, right? So the whole thing is designed to steal our money and to make us believe in some hocus pocus space travel, when in fact they're building these underground facilities for them to survive when they decide to pull the plug on civilization in a way that's going to turn us into the Hunger Games model. Do you understand the logic here and the explanation here of what I have explained to you? Carbon dioxide is a very important gas. And as a matter of fact, people that have greenhouses that grow things in a greenhouse, and they'll tell you that the higher the level of CO2, the higher the plant or the yield will be with their crop. More carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the higher the trees and the plants grow. Okay, those are facts, folks. It's tree food. It's plant food. But they can't produce it underground because there's no sunlight in the tubes of Hades, right? So these guys in their underground facilities need to be able to produce oxygen so they can run their operations down there. And the only way they can do that, and by the way, it's very difficult to extract oxygen from the air. You can use a process with water. You can use a process called electrolysis where you can split the water molecule, but that's a very volatile and dangerous process and very energy intensive. And it uses a tremendous amount of water. So their best bet is to take an inert, literally an inert, not necessarily inert, but very unreactive gas like CO2. It's very stable. You can compress it, store it. It's not explosive. It's not a fire hazard. And you could take tremendous amounts of this and pump it underground, and you could store it in tanks or in stone deposits, in porous stone deposits and things of that nature. And you can use it to produce oxygen with the proper type of equipment, folks. There are mechanisms by which carbon dioxide can be split and turned into breathable oxygen and elemental carbon. And elemental carbon is very important for a variety of reasons, because that can also be used as a building block for a lot of different things, folks. I mean, the chemistry of carbon is the chemistry of life, right? And, that's what all of the organic chemistry is based off of, is the chemistry of carbon. And most of the molecules in our existence are carbon-based. So, folks, they have figured out a way to make you believe in Buck Rogers and all this BS and believe NASA's real with all this green screen nonsense and these circus clown actors in their blue T-shirts, all cheering and clapping as they're looking at their video game monitor, and you're looking at some green screen remote-controlled Jeep Wrangler on the continent of Greenland or in the New Mexico desert, driving around like a dune buggy, like my buddies would do out in Glamis after they did nitrous hits and smoke weed all day and play around and drink Bud Light. And, it's a joke, folks. They're taking the CO2 out of the atmosphere to pump it into the underground facilities. Now, I don't like to talk about this stuff, but a lot of people say, oh, Joe, you're a downer. Oh, you're depressing. You're not positive. You're putting out negative vibes. Look, folks, it ain't about vibes, okay? It's about truth. Let's talk about all these solar installations everywhere, right? Why do they want you to have a solar panel on your house? I mean, the reality is they could give us free energy generating systems that would pull the energy right out of the ether if they wanted to. But they gave us, they gave us wiring and They named the big wiring company after a snake. I think it's Anaconda. Yeah, right. It's funny, isn't it? They call it an anaconda. I don't want to meet an anaconda. But anyway, that's a big wire company. Been around for a long time, named after a snake. Isn't that fitting, right? So, they've given us all these things to put on the roof, right? And what are solar panels designed to do? Well, they're designed to absorb photonic energy from the sun, and through a process with, this energy being captured and run on these panels and with this metal, and the electrons flow according to the model that they give us, and then it's converted with an inverter to the proper voltage and a sine wave inverter to harmonize the voltage, and then the step down gives us the 110 or the 220 that we need. But those panels are antennas, folks. Now, antennas can do two things, okay? I don't know if you realize this, but antennas are built to receive and to transmit, right? An antenna, if it's tuned to a specific frequency, it can receive and broadcast on that frequency. If something of that frequency band is aimed at it, it can pick it up and it'll go inside. It's like a keyhole, right? And an antenna or a solar panel, it'll let the right frequency in. Folks, they could surge every one of these things, okay? They can surge every one of these things and blow them up. And they're connected to everything in your house, including these refrigerators and air conditioners that run on 110 volt AC, alternating current in the United States, which are all connected through a smart meter at the breaker box on every home and building and office. Now they got this massive solar array on the roof, right? And a lot of these places have lithium battery storage systems on them. I mean, my neighbor's got this Tesla power wall. And let me tell you something, folks. Once that thing blows up, you can't put that fire out. Now, it's a good thing that's, in a distance from my house that's not going to affect where I'm sleeping. God help the guy that's living in the place. But these lithium-ion batteries are literal bombs, folks. And when you put them in series or in parallel, and you connect them to a circuitry that's connected to your smart meter that's wired into a set of solar panels on the roof, those can be surged with a signal, an energy surge, if you will. They can blow the house up. And these refrigerators and air conditioners, they use a system of compression and expansion of these gases that they put inside these compressors. And during the compression and expansion process of these gases, heat is generated and then heat is extracted, and that's where you get the cold, right? And so they're using flammable refrigerants now, okay? Cyclopentane and other ones. They used to be using CFCs, these chlorofluorocarbons, commonly known as Freon, which were banned because of this fraudulent atmospheric chemistry Nobel Prize laureate Francis Sherry Rowland and his sidekick Molina, who, by the way, was running the laboratory in the basement of the physical science building at University of California, Irvine in 1989, when I was in the laboratory next door. I would go to my door to the right of their lab, and they were running this atmospheric chemistry laboratory, allegedly purporting that the creation and proliferation of chlorofluorocarbon propellants in the aerosol cans, like the spray paint cans and the antiperspirant cans, and the refrigeration systems like air conditioners and refrigerators, and even the foam production like the urethane and styrofoam production. They were using these CFCs as expansive gases to bubble the stuff out. They made the allegation that these chemicals were causing the ozone layer of the earth to break down. Ozone is 3 oxygen molecules, 3 oxygen atoms in one molecule, and it filters out ultraviolet light high up in the atmosphere, and it's constantly regenerated by the presence of ultraviolet light. So, you know, it's a self-replicating filter. It filters out what actually creates it. It's impossible to deplete the Earth's ozone layer. But it's a good scam to deplete the supply of safe refrigerants that don't blow up. And it's a good scam to get the entire world to change over to flammable refrigerants that can blow up. As a matter of fact, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm going to have a sip of coffee here. All right. If you do any research on these high-rise apartment fires, like, you know, these towering inferno apartment buildings that catch on fire and kill people, they're always caused by a refrigerator catching on fire. Now, I remember growing up, I had this neighbor across the street, and it was quite a funny house. This guy was always on the couch in the garage, and they'd always be out there smoking pot. And, you know, I'd come home from working at the restaurant on a Friday night. It'd be 12:30. I don't know, let me think about this here. I may have been 18, 19 years old at the time. And I'd go over there and see these guys. I'd come home from work. Sometimes I had my girlfriend with me. And these guys would be in the garage watching a test pattern, right? They'd be, on the couch and reclined in their chairs in the garage watching a test pattern from smoking a bunch of weed, right? And, you know, there was a lot of old junk in the house, the garage. One of the really interesting things that I was never exposed to at a young age was there was this old refrigerator in the garage. And he's, it runs on propane. I'm like, what? I never heard of a refrigerator running on a flammable gas. I never understood that, but it stuck with me. Because back in the old days, during the I guess the initial rollout of this technology, that's what they dabbled with until the DuPont Corporation invented and patented the chlorofluorocarbon molecule, and that was widely utilized in refrigeration. But that was my first exposure at a young age to a flammable refrigerant, right? You don't stick the barbecue into the outlet and hook it up to the compressor and hook it up to a Wi-Fi router and then connect it to a smart meter and then put it connected to all these solar panels on the roof so somebody can remote into the smart meter or surge the solar panels and blow the damn thing up, right? Well, they got a lot of ways to blow everything up, folks. And that's just one angle. If they want to burn up your neighborhood, they can surge the smart meters and blow up your flammable refrigerants in these appliances and start these fires. Guess what else they can do? Think about it, folks. Think about what they can do with plasma weapons. I've talked about plasma events. Plasma is the other state of matter that they don't talk about in the schools for good reason. Plasma is I guess it was the central topic of the music industry's album sleeve artwork for several decades. And plasma is the ultimate weapon, folks. Because with the plasma weapons, they can now just completely take down the power grid and blame it on a solar flare. Because they have put up enough solar arrays on enough homes to pop every transformer in the country all at once if they decide to surge these solar arrays. And so if we have a situation where they decide to play with this weapon, if they give us another Carrington event, which they did back in the day in the 1850s, where they smoked all the telegraphs, but now it ain't going to be telegraph wires. Remember, wires can conduct and they can also transmit depending upon what's done to them. Okay? Think about it, folks. Now they've got these solar panels all over the roofs that they can surge with energy, and they can smoke the power grid. They can blow up every transformer there is, all right? And they'll never get them fixed because it takes forever to bring them into the country after they're made. We're doomed if they do that, folks. And that is why they've built these underground facilities, okay, for them. Because they're going to go hide in the dark. You know, I have a fire pit in my backyard. It's made out of a washing machine bin, stainless steel washing machine bin. Probably the most ingenious thing ever invented by, anyone with a mind. My good friend who was an appliance repairman for many years named Chris turned me on to this and gave me a couple of them, and we use it quite oftenly. One night, a buddy of mine and I were hanging out in the backyard, and, I always put, enough stuff in the fire pit to get it, ready to go, paper and sticks, whatever. But I noticed the night before that this friend of mine, he actually put a propane tank in there. For some reason, I told him to clean up in the back, and he put the propane tank inside the fire pit. And so I decided to play a little trick on him. And the next day when everybody came over, this was during COVID, during the phony baloney lockdown crap, we were just hanging out and having a good time. I told my buddy, I said, hey, we'll have a fire, come on by. So everybody shows up. And so my friend that put the propane tank in the fire pit, I lit the fire, and I told him, hey, have a seat. He's like, hey, I put a propane tank in there. I'm like, what are you talking about? And the thing was already going, right? Things like, I already took the propane tank out, but he didn't know it. My point is this guy who put the propane tank in the fire pit the night before, when he saw that the fire was burning, do you know what he did? He ran away. He ran away and hid in the dark because he's a coward. That's right. He was the one that put the propane tank in the fire pit, and he had no idea I already took it out. All he saw was the thing burning, and he thought it was going to blow up. So he ran away and hid in the dark because he's a coward. That's what these people are, folks. They want to run away and hide in the dark while they blow everything up. And why do you think through Talmud and Kabbalah they give us things like the Hunger Games? Because they're telling us what they're going to do. And that's the society we're going to be living in. No electricity, no running water, everything blown up and bombed out. 100,000th of the population, nothing to eat but each other. That's where it's headed, folks, and that's why they have these carbon capture facilities, so they can produce oxygen for their underground facilities. Isn't it just like a coward to go hide in the dark? And isn't it just like their father, the devil, who operates in the dark, right? In darkness. That's their God, folks. That is the God that they serve. Their father, the devil, who is a liar and a murderer from the beginning, right? And I won't get into the genealogy of the fallen, because there's a lot of people that go down rabbit holes on that, but I will tell you that there are people that are their father, the devil. And they hate us. And they want to kill us. And that's why they've given us all of these accoutrements to kill us and destroy us and ruin us and pervert and corrupt and subvert everything good and natural and wholesome. And the whole time they got a rope around everybody's neck with the interest rate system, right? Everybody's working for debt and debt paper, right? The fiat currency that's literally debt. It's just debt paper. Has no intrinsic value, so they steal our intellectual property, our time, our assets, our productivity, and folks, I could go on, but you need to understand they do have a plan to take down the electrical grid with a plasma event, and you're helping them along by putting these things on your roof, and you're helping them along by putting these flammable appliances in your home, and they can blow up your house. They can catch your house on fire. All they got to do is surge that smart meter, and I like to go on tangents because the other day I have these security lights in my house because, quite frankly, there have been attempts at gaining access to my property. I've had Well, I guess I've had law enforcement come to my home. I've had people from the district attorney's office come to my home. I've had people that were probably intelligence assets come to my home, and then there have been times where people actually tried to gain access to my property in the middle of the night. Okay, none of which had any level of success in deterring or affecting my life, but nonetheless, they were attempts to thwart either my activism or intimidate me. But what I'm getting at is I have to have a pretty good illumination system of my property with my camera so I can maintain a level of and semblance of security. And I was changing out these LED motion sensor lights because a couple of them had burned out. And in normal fashion, I always like to take a look at things. And I broke one of these things open, and there's circuitry in this thing, folks. Okay, and this is a light bulb that I spent $1 on at Home Depot in the clearance section. This was an LED light, and it's got a motion sensor built into it. And then I had some other ones that were screwed into a motion sensor light that didn't have a motion sensor. And I opened those up. There's circuitry in that too, because these are light emitting diode bulbs, and they're basically they've got a little circuit board in there. Well, that's a 99-cent light bulb with a circuit board, folks, hooked up to the outlet. Can you imagine the level of sophistication in a smart meter and the two-way capabilities that it has? They can turn it on and turn it off remotely in times of peak demand on electricity. So, folks, what I'm telling you is they can do a lot of stuff that you don't know about. You need to understand that everything is a lie, and everything that you've been taught to believe is a lie, folks, and you need to understand what their real agenda is, okay? And it ain't good, folks. Just watch the movies. That's the desires of their filthy, evil hearts, right? All right. Be prepared, folks, and understand that, look, at the end of the day, when I talk about this stuff, it's not because it's a downer, folks. You need to be right with Jesus Christ. You need to be ready to die, ladies and gentlemen. You need to be ready to meet your maker. You can't be fearing death. You can't be afraid to die, okay? This world is not all there is. This life is not all there is. This place is not all there is, folks. We are eternal beings, and we get to spend eternity in one or two places. You follow Jesus Christ, you bow the knee, you live for him, and you let his Holy Spirit fill you, and you will be in paradise for eternity once you pass out of here, no matter what they do to this physical body. That's the message, folks. And the reason I bring this up at the very end is because that's exactly where it needs to be. The best part of the book is at the end, folks. We always win. The good always wins. We may not physically win here, but in the scope of eternity, we can't lose, because we follow the one who paid it all, who conquered the grave, who raised the dead, who cured the blind, who healed the sick and the lame. And it talks about how in the New Testament, how all the books in the world could not contain all the works that he did. Folks, you need to wake up and don't put all your eggs in this basket here, folks. You got to live your life, have your families, have your children, and give life through God's will, and bring in another generation, because guess what? It doesn't matter how long they live here. They live forever when we get to eternity, folks. We are in the process and in the business of fulfilling the Great Commission, to spreading the word about the good news of Jesus Christ, how he paid it all, how you don't have to live in your sin, how you don't have to be a slave to your sin, how you don't have to die in your sin, and how you have access to the throne of God right now. You have an open line, a toll-free number to talk to the Heavenly Father, who hears your prayers, who reads your mind, and who knows your heart, and who controls your destiny if you'll just let him, and if you'll just yield to his will in your life, instead of filling your life with all the filth of the television and the music industry and all the other garbage that's out there. There is life and liberty in the Lord, folks. And we're supposed to be awake and vigilant in this life, and we're not supposed to be fearful or cowardly or even willfully ignorant or walk around in a state of cognitive dissonance, folks. We're supposed to be wise and redeeming the time, for the days are evil, and that's what this ministry is all about. This is Joe Imbriano, the Fullerton Informer, coming to you in the name of Jesus Christ on this Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. on another beautiful day in sunny Southern California, as we know not what tomorrow holds for any of us. Therefore, let us live today for the one who paid it all, Jesus Christ. Take care, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. My contact information is P.O. Box 4121, Fullerton, California, 92831. Take care. God bless.